I'm a little bit annoyed because this whole time I've quite enjoyed using my Apple Vision Pro. I mean, obviously there's a couple of issues with it, but overall, like, this has been a pretty good experience for me until I talked to my friend recently who pointed out a couple of things, and now that he's mentioned it to me, I cannot unsee it, and it's really, really bugging me. So the point of the Apple Vision Pro is for it to be a productivity tool, but you can be productive in it for sure. But in order to be productive in it, you kind of have to jump through a lot of hoops. Like, let me just preface this so you have a clear picture. I have a friend who's been using VR for work for over 5 years. Like, he spends 8+ hours a day in VR as a software developer. And he loves it because you can have infinite amount of monitors and you get to have all these different environments. So it makes sense. Like, you get into a very focused flow as a software developer. But when I talked to him recently, he told me that the Apple Vision Pro really bugs him. And he started saying things like, well, you don't really have dedicated workspaces, and things are just floating in the air. And at first I was like, what's the problem with things floating in the air? Like, it's cool. Like, you can have whatever you want wherever you want. It's like so open-ended. But the more I use my Apple Vision Pro, the more it became apparent to me what he's talking about. So let me explain it this way. Some of the things that I use the Apple Vision Pro for is like I said in my last video, I really like using my Apple Vision Pro for journaling at the end of the day. Like, I can create like a really good, relaxing ambiance to be able to foster like my creative thinking. But as I kept journaling every single night, I would have to open up every single app that I wanted to display around me because there's no dedicated workspaces. So I can't just save like my journaling layout where I have, the different things that I want to have around me whenever I'm journaling. And the same with using my Apple Vision Pro to watch stuff. Like, if I was watching stuff on YouTube or on or whatever, every single time I want to watch something, I have to set up my layout all over again, which is, open up a browser, make it front center, make it stretch it out to be big, make my environment slightly transparent. And then it's also the same when I'm meeting with people in VR. Usually when I'm meeting in my office. So why is it that every time I have I'm meeting with people in my office, I have to lay out where exactly the browser is that we're looking at, that I want it laid out in my room? Yeah, so this just doesn't make sense. If the Apple Vision Pro is meant for productivity, then why can't I have different workspaces, preset workspaces that I can lay out? And to make matters worse, on your Apple Vision Pro, the apps are laid out in a default way, which is alphabetical order. So if the apps that you want to open up I'll just use journaling again. If the apps that I want to open up while I'm journaling are on opposite ends of the alphabet, then I'm gonna have to scroll through every single every single page of apps in order to get to the apps that I want. And sometimes I can't remember the apps that I want to open. I don't always remember what they're called. Yeah, so it's been getting a little bit frustrating. And the other part of this too is I just don't understand why I can't set up different spaces in my house to use my Apple Vision Pro. Again, if I'm in this office, I probably want the screen I'm looking at or using with my coworkers to be up against that back wall. I think that makes sense. Or it could be right in front here because my table's here and I can have my keyboard. And then if I'm in my room and I want to journal, I just wish I could set up specific spaces. And whenever I walked into that room, my Vision Pro would say, hey, I noticed you walked into a different room. Do you want me to rearrange your Apple Vision Pro layout to match this room? That would be amazing. And I feel like the Apple Vision Pro is perfectly capable of doing this, especially with the processing power. So I'm not quite sure why that hasn't happened. Another thing too is sometimes when I'm on my table and there's different apps that I want to open up and I want to, make it interact with my environment. I have to guess how far I have to put it in my virtual space so it looks like it's on the table. Like, why can't I just say that this is a table in my house, Apple Vision Pro, and please set this app on the surface of my table? Anyway, I mean, I know this headset is still quite early on. I guess it's been what, like 3 or so months now since it released. So I am hoping that they resolve this. But the things that I'm talking about is very similar to Meta Quest 3's augments that they've been talking about, where like you can have different portals in different parts of your house, where, for example, if you walked into a room and that was the room that you always worked out in, maybe you'd have like your, I don't know, fitness portal there, and then you could always click it to start it, that kind of stuff. Yeah, what I'm talking about with Apple Vision Pro is pretty similar, except it would be really nice to have specific workspaces. Another like workspace that could be cool too is like, you know, every time I want to do a Steam link to my computer so I can play a Steam game in my Apple Vision Pro, like I pretty much always want to have Discord open on the right side, right? So it would just be great if there was these apps, the apps that I commonly use together, if they could always open up at the same time. Because really, like, once you get into a flow of using Apple Vision Pro, like, or any piece of tech, you're pretty much doing a lot of the same things on them. Anyway, the hardware itself is pretty good. So I think as long as the software side can catch up and be able to do some of these features to improve the quality of life, I think that there could be a lot more value and much more like enjoyable experiences using the Apple Vision Pro. I just found this really good article from Road to VR from Ben Lang that kind of talks about some of the things that I mentioned. So he talks about window management, which I talked about. He has here pinning windows so that it never moves. I think that's kind of similar to what I said about laying out your space depending on the room that you're in, would be awesome. He talks about following. So a window can follow you like a good boy. I did not think about this, but this would be awesome. Especially, actually, one time I was FaceTiming someone downstairs, and when I walked upstairs, the window did not follow me. It just stayed downstairs, so that was kind of annoying. So this would be great for FaceTime stuff. The presets and groups, pretty much exactly what I already talked about, having like groups of apps opening together. And then he also talks about app flow. So it lets you put multiple apps into a single window. Again, what I've already mentioned. So grouping things together. A mission control would be super cool. So this says the macOS view that explodes all windows right in front of you, so you can quickly pick one to focus on. That would be amazing, because like right now you just have the different apps and you kind of have to keep pulling them. And yeah, there's so many things that Apple has already done on all their other systems that they just need to integrate it into the Apple Vision Pro. Actually, fun fact, I used to work at Apple, and Apple is very separated. So I worked in the iPhone, I worked on the iPhone division, iPhone operations, and basically like you wouldn't even know what the person who's sitting next to you is doing, because it's such a walled garden there. It's very like, unless you're working on it, you're not allowed to know anything about it. So I'm pretty sure that Apple Vision Pro was built by a team all on its own, and I think it would be really good if they share some information between the different teams, like on iPhones and Mac and iPad, etc., just to try to incorporate some of the really intuitive features on all the other hardware that Apple already owns, and bringing that into Apple Vision Pro. This also says having multiple users. I agree, because right now you can only have one user on your Apple Vision Pro, but having multiple profiles would be so nice, because this thing's expensive. Do they really want us to buy like a separate one for every single person in your house? Like, I'm not wearing my Apple Vision Pro 24/7, and I would be perfectly fine letting someone use it with their own profile, but as long as we both have like a different interface, because it's kind of yucky getting like all the germs. But outside of that, I would be perfectly fine. Okay, this also says multiple Mac displays, which would be great. To be honest, I actually never connect my MacBook, even though I have a MacBook, to my Apple Vision Pro. I just use all my windows in Apple Vision Pro natively. I think because I don't have a trackpad, so it gets too confusing in my brain to use like my mouse when I'm using apps in my MacBook. But then as soon as you try to use an app in Apple Vision Pro, you all of a sudden have to switch to a pinching mechanism, and it's too confusing. So I actually don't use my MacBook at all with my Apple Vision Pro currently, although maybe I should with like editing. That could be good. I just haven't tried it. Right, and then this talks about a desk mode, something that we've seen in on the MetaQuest, where you like if you're in a fully immersive environment. Again, I don't really use my Apple Vision Pro in a fully immersive environment basically ever. I almost always have it in pass-through. Like, I think part of the reason why I don't ever use it in fully immersive environments is because like the fully immersive environments aren't that enticing enough. But I guess if there was a desk mode where I can like specify a specific area, like a little window into my real room, relative to having like the immersive space around me, I guess I could see myself using fully immersive more. Okay, and on here it also says gestures. So having different gestures to allow you to like open different like menu systems. So the MetaQuest already has this put in there. It's so funny because when I switch between like my Apple Vision Pro to my MetaQuest, I end up like looking all the way to the top of my MetaQuest. I just forget that that's not how it works in the Apple Vision Pro. So I don't know, sometimes looking all the way up, maybe like my eye tracking is not always working properly, so it doesn't always show the menu up there for the Apple Vision Pro. So I can see how gestures could be helpful if you don't always want to look like you're like rolling your eyeballs all over the place. Another thing that really bugs me about the Apple Vision Pro in regards to hardware is obviously strap isn't comfortable. The top strap it came with, I just never got used to. I am hoping to get a third-party top strap for this so that I can actually use this for a longer amounts of time without it starting to weigh heavy on my face. But the other thing that really bugs me is like this. I cannot tell you how many times my friends have dropped this battery, and actually how many times I've dropped this battery. Like, I've had this headset for quite a while now, and I've dropped this thing so often. I just always forget about it. And I honestly don't think it would have been that expensive for Apple to include like a little pouch that this goes into. That's just a piece of fabric that shouldn't cost that much. And I know you can buy it separately, but like, why? It's so annoying to always drop this. So anyway, that has been a point of contention. And obviously I know you all already know that this facial interface does not stay on very well. It almost always falls off every time I grab my Apple Vision Pro headset. So that's some of my points of contention for the hardware piece of this. I do think there's a lot of potential for the Apple Vision Pro, and there's a lot of good productivity uses for it, but obviously a lot of room for improvement to make this a very viable alternative option for using like your computer, your phone, whatever. There's a lot of work that can still be improved, but I'm looking forward to seeing what Apple continues to do. If we know anything about them, they're always pushing software to make it friendly for customers and intuitive. So excited to see what continues to happen. And yeah, let me know if you have any other things you want me to talk about in the VR space, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.